Hi, my name is Brad Emery, and this is my artifact video for a little bit of additional explanation for my NLP Standard 3, looking at equity, inclusiveness, and cultural responsiveness in the elementary school and classroom. This is component 3.3. We're taking a look at evaluating the root causes of inequity and bias. I talked a little bit about the adverse childhood experiences with our trauma-informed training and how that relates to the secondary level for one of my other artifacts. But for this artifact, I want to take the time and really dig into what do adverse childhood experiences, these ACEs, have on our root causes of inequality or inequity and bias in the elementary school. So I've pulled up a website here. This is joiningforcesforchildren.org, and so we're going to do a real quick overview of what are ACEs, or adverse childhood experiences again. And then we're going to take a look at how these are really the root of the problem, so to speak, and how that contributes to bias in education and how we can address that. So ACEs, or adverse childhood experiences, are traumatic experiences that create stress in an environment while a student or a individual is still a child. So there's 10 of them. We'll go over them briefly here in a moment, but all of these traumatic experiences can either be a one-time event or they can be over time, smaller traumatic experiences over a course of time. It can be a short time or it can be a longer time, but those traumatic experiences build up and layer on one another to create traumatic events that have lasting effects all the way throughout the life of an individual. And they have physical and emotional and mental consequences and ramifications all the way through adulthood. So there are 10 ACEs that have been identified in 3 different categories. We've got abuse, physical, emotional, and sexual abuse. We have neglect, which can be physical or emotional, and we have household dysfunction, which spans the range from mental illness to a relative in prison or jail, domestic violence, a mother treated violently, substance abuse, and divorce. So you can see there's some additional resources here if you want to dive into this. I've linked this website on the presentation as well, and there are some questionnaires and things if you want to assess where you are at with your ACEs. But what I really want to focus on for the purposes of this is this idea of ACEs as a root cause of inequality and bias in our school. So to do that, what we need to understand is what effects do ACEs have on students and on people in general. So you can see here they get under our skin and they create toxic stress. So we've got 3 different zones here. We have positive stress, we have tolerable stress, we have toxic stress. Well, of course, we all experience stress on a daily basis and in our lives, and we have what they call positive stress, which is kind of an odd terminology, I'll be the first to admit. But this would be your normal, your healthy response to a stressor in your life. So these are the little things that occur and affect us day to day, and they're things that you probably don't even really think about. Okay, then you have your tolerable stress, where this is stress that you're aware of, and it's starting to take a little bit of a toll, and it starts to kick in your body's stress response. And so you've got a little bit of a flight or fight response, and this isn't bad in and of itself, but it leads to, and when compounded upon itself, can create toxic stress. And that's where you get this prolonged, this long-term activation of the body's stress response. You're creating cortisol, the stress hormone, and it really just causes long-term damage and havoc. And that's the foundation for these adverse childhood experiences, these traumatic experiences, and they create that stress that lasts and doesn't ever leave your body. So that has long-term effects on the brain. And what it does is we've discovered through research that this actually rewires your brain and creates quicker stress pathways so that your response to experiences and things that are happening in your life, or in the case of education, things that are happening at school, you are much quicker to flip that switch and jump into a flight or fight response. So I mentioned this on my other artifact as well. This is something we call dysregulations. Your brain no longer has the ability to regulate your emotions, and they all just spew out as part of your response. And we've all had this happen where you reach a point of stress that you say something you regret, you do something you regret, your emotions are controlling your actions. That's dysregulation. Now, where this really sets in on an educational level, and what we see certainly with a grade school environment as well, is students who have a lot of these ACEs, who have a lot of these traumatic experiences, have a much shorter pathway to that stress. It's much more immediate. It takes far less to set it off. And what that results in is these kids that for many years we've just considered, for lack of a better term, the bad students, or the ones that can't control themselves, or it's these kids that no matter what you do or how long you work with them, it seems like they'll have a good day or a good week, and then we turn around and the littlest thing just trips a switch and they're off, whether that's just refusing to do work, or maybe they blow up in your classroom, and it just is a very disproportional response, and they cannot seem to get past it. Now, for years and years, we've just looked at them and wondered, what's going on? Why can't we help this kid? And we've tried a bunch of different strategies and things. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. But what's really exciting about these ACEs studies and the training we've had within our district is that now we have a root cause, we have the reason that kids react this way. We see that that's tied in with the experiences they're having at home, and unfortunately, you can have these adverse experiences at school too. If you've got an educator who's repeatedly creating stress through their instruction and through their interaction with a student, we can actually create these adverse childhood experiences, these ACEs, that layer on to what they've already got and make life even more difficult for a student, and add to that dysregulation and make that pathway to a dysregulation even shorter. So we want to make sure we know these root causes, and I've been really excited that our school has taken the time to dig in and figure out what causes kids who we just feel like we can't help, or who are on the outskirts and who we've tried a lot of different things. And this excites me from an administrative perspective, because now we have research and data backing up that these kids do have a reason for acting the way they do. Even better, we have strategies that we can start implementing to help them. And I addressed that a little more in my other video on a secondary level, and they're very similar strategies for the grade school level. But as far as how this relates to administration, I want to make sure that wherever I have the opportunity to serve as an administrator, that my teachers are aware of the medical science and the new research coming out on these topics of ACEs and traumatic experiences, so that we're not biased towards students that we've been biased towards, that I've been biased towards in the past. Those kids that just never seem to get it, or that we just can't help. There's a reason, there's a cause, and when we know the cause, when we know the reason, we can start to address it. And I don't think there's any better news than that for educators or for administrators. So that's something I want to make sure that we're taking the time to share. So thank you for watching this video and taking a little bit of time to walk through this with me. And if you're curious about more, I encourage you to check out this link and spend a little more time looking through this.